Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're viewing this podcast. This podcast series we call Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. And we hope to touch on all three of those subject areas. 2 out of 3 with regularity, we do touch on those areas. But definitely, it would be great if we can hit all 3. We started this series a week after the murder of George Floyd. And we've had different guests come into this space to speak about race, culture, and church in the Sacramento area, California, nationwide. And so I invite you to go back. I think we're up to episode 49 now. So I invite you to go back, look at, just kind of cherry pick and see what piques your interest. We've had quite a few guests, and I'm sure there's something there that will whet your appetite, if you will. But I am pleased. I am extremely honored to have in this space the sheriff of Sacramento County, the 37th sheriff of Sacramento County, Jim Cooper. Sheriff, thank you so very much for being in this space.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It is indeed our honor. It is really our honor, and it is great to have you in this space. 37th. So you're the 36 folks before you. And let me go out on a limb. There probably wasn't another Jim Cooper in the other 36 pools in the pool of sheriffs for Sac County.
No, there was not.
Okay. Help me out. As far as African-American men or women, how many, if you know, sheriffs are there in California or nationwide?
So there are 58 sheriffs in California. Up until me assuming office, when I assumed it in December of last year, there had only been one black sheriff ever.
And that was which county?
Siskiyou County.
Wow.
Sheriff Byrd. So you think about that, and that was quite a while ago, to be as big as California is and the number of sheriffs we have. And a lot of these departments go back, probably 170, 180 years now.
Right.
They've been in existence. So I was the second. And we actually have a third, the sheriff of Sonoma County, Eddie Ingram. He was sworn in January.
Wow.
So we've doubled what we had before.
We added one, so we've doubled. Nationwide, I can't imagine it's a huge number either.
You see more in the South.
Okay.
And you do see quite a few. And obviously it's different. The thing about sheriff, you're elected, so you have to go out and make sure the voters like what you're about and support you. So that's really the big difference in being sheriff.
That kind of leads me to a question I have. So besides being elected as opposed to appointed, what is the biggest difference, say, being a sheriff, chief of law enforcement for a county versus chief of police for a municipality?
Well, in the Constitution, we're responsible for maintaining the jails and courts. So we have added responsibilities in addition to patrol investigations. And with a police chief, and they do a great job, there is influence there from that city manager who typically hires them, or the manager or city council. So there are outside influences. We see them here, sometimes throughout the region, sometimes good, sometimes bad, versus the sheriff. The people elected you, so you're responsible to them. So you have a lot more autonomy being a sheriff than a police chief per se. And you're able to say things that police chiefs can't say or do. And we see that. I've seen that in the legislature, who comes out and supports bills or opposes bills because you have nothing to worry about. But at the end of the day, if you're a chief, you've got a city manager looking over your shoulder and or a mayor and council.
So lived out, your sheriff, Sacramento County, if someone came to you, let's just pretend you're not Sheriff Sacramento County Jim Cooper, someone said, I would like you to be sheriff of ABC, I'd like you to be police chief of ABC City or sheriff of that county. If you had your choice, sounds like it would be sheriff of the county.
100%. And the big thing is the autonomy. I'm my own person. I sink or swim on my own. If the public doesn't like what I'm doing or saying, they can vote me out. Whereas a police chief, if just a bad day, that chief can be gone.
Police chiefs typically serve at will.
They're at will, correct.
Okay. All right. Well, wow. Okay. Well, that answered that. So you, as you just mentioned, you assumed office in December 2022. But prior to that, you were a member of the California State Assembly, 9th District from 2014 to 2022. Let me just read what I've been able to scrape off, like I said, our Cracker Jack research team comprised of me. That's the research team. Member of the State Assembly from 2014 to 2022. Member of the California Legislative Black Caucus. Assistant Majority Leader. Assistant Majority Whip, which is I like to kind of come to understand. You have to corral and count votes.
Correct.
You have to know. You be able to count to a majority in order to affect change. Founding mayor and council member of City of Elk Grove, 2000 to 2014. And prior to that, 30 years with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. And you retired as captain. So that's 1984 to 2014. What I've noticed in that whole arc, there were no gaps. There may have been, I guess, a few weeks, maybe a few months, but you have gone from the sheriff's department, from college to sheriff's department to step after step after step. I would joke and say, well, you're quite the underachiever. It's like there's been no grass growing under your feet. What accounts for that?
Drive. I've always been that way. My parents instilled a drive in me, a hard work ethic to get things done. And in some aspects, overachiever. I really shouldn't be here, and I was just a middle of the road student in high school, and I never envisioned myself being here. So it's not where you start, it's where you finish. That old adage definitely applies to me.
Did you see young Jim Cooper in high school? Did you see Jim Cooper, Sacramento County Sheriff?
No, never. I really didn't have an idea what I wanted to do. I knew I needed to go to college. My mom told me, "You will go to college." My parents, that was not an option. That's what I told my kids. And I started college. I was working at the Sac 6 drive-in at Bradshaw and 50, and they had some deputy sheriffs working there off duty. I'd never been around a cop before in my life, and started talking to those folks, and they were encouraging me to take the test and apply. And I was 19 years old, and took the test, applied, and passed it, and got accepted. And I started the academy about a month after I turned 20.
Wow.
And that was back in 1984.
And all of this, what I also was able to glean, you pursued and received your master's degree in leadership from St. Mary's College while all of this is going on.
Yes.
So you're obviously you're able to multitask at a very high level.
I had to. In the sheriff's department, if you want to promote, you've got to get your degree. And obviously it helps to have a grad degree. So it was going back to the FBI Academy. I went to a lot of training, a lot of leadership courses over the course, because you want to be a good leader. You're affecting public policy. And it was interesting. And, being on the Elk Grove City Council, the founding mayor, there really is no blueprint for building a city from the ground up. So that was kind of by, hit and miss sometimes. Mm-hmm. It was tough, but I'm proud of what we achieved in Elk Grove. It's a good city. It's got a good base. It's a lot of working class families. Mm-hmm. So that's where I really cut my teeth at in the political world.
What did you say you cut your teeth? If you can tease that out a little bit more in terms of what were some of the lessons, either easy or hard lessons learned in that process? Just dealing with in the political realm. So let me back off a bit. You're the sheriff. Not that you need a reminder. You're the sheriff of Sacramento County. I think that is the consummate blending of law enforcement and politics. Whereas mayor of Elk Grove, that's politics. Assembly member, that's politics. Sheriff's department, that's law enforcement. Now you're the sheriff. You're the man. Those two come together. Obviously, as you shared, you didn't foresee that.
No.
But everything, I'm assuming, has prepared you for this time, this place.
Yeah, and you're right. It actually made me a better person. And it really starts when I was the sheriff's spokesman. I was the first Black spokesman for the sheriff's department. I did that for 4 years. And our sheriff then was Glenn Craig. And obviously working for elected sheriff, you have a lot of autonomy as a spokesman to go out and say and do things. It's less restrictive than, say, a spokesman for a police department. So I got a taste of that there. And obviously I ran during that time for Elk Grove City Council. And like I said, it wasn't easy. It was tough, but it's about leadership, and you're hiring people, firing people, specifically your city manager, city attorney. So you really learn how to deal with things. And coming from law enforcement, we're making life and death decisions on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a hard time making a decision. There are a lot of people in this world, in the legislature and other places, even city councils, that have a hard time making a decision. And that served me very well, because I could, wade through the clutter and figure out what was important and what I want to do once I got all the information. So it's been very helpful to me with having that career in law enforcement, and then also adding the political part to it. So I originally ran for sheriff in 2010 and lost to Scott Jones by less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost that race. I worked for Scott for 4 more years. And it was good. It was good to lose a race. I'll tell you what, in hindsight, me losing that race helped propel me to the legislature. And 8 years being in the legislature, it's like getting a PhD in politics. So that was very, very helpful. And now being back as sheriff now, when I take that experience, 30 years in the sheriff's department, 15 as a mayor and council member, and then 8 in the legislature, I feel like I got a PhD. So making decisions every day is much easier. And mind you, I left 4 years on the table in the legislature. I was not termed out until 26. And a lot of folks told me, why do you want to go back to law enforcement? It's just with what's going on, the reforms, just the whole public perception, things have really changed. And it's a lot of hard work. Stay in the legislature, do your 4 years because you're one of 120. Mm-hmm. You blend in. And when you go back as sheriff, you're the head on that statute. You're the target.
So they say the buck stops with you.
Yeah, it's not easy. So why would you want to subject yourself to that? You've paid your dues already. Mm-hmm. And then my daughters did not want me going back in law enforcement.
Obviously, they lost.
They lost.
So I like how you put it. It gave you a graduate degree, a PhD. Just having, you underscore the adage, you learn more from losing or setbacks that appear to be setbacks that actually position a person to be better prepared for what's to come. That's not always easy. It's probably never easy to receive at the moment, but in retrospect, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from losing, if you will.
Yeah, I kept my head up. I never had my head down. I was still proud of who I was and what I did, but it was good. I mean, no one ever wins. No one bats 1,000. And people have to learn that. There will be hills and valleys, and you're not always successful. So it's good to learn that. In the legislature, it's about compromise. Mm-hmm. If you don't compromise, you will never get anything accomplished because they humble you real quick in the legislature.
What did you, how long was it that when you retired as captain to the time you came back as sheriff?
8 years.
8 years. Was it demonstrably different in those 8 years?
Very.
Okay.
That was probably the most shocking thing because remember, prior to my leaving, the reforms hadn't happened. George Floyd hadn't happened. So all these things happened. You have these reforms that come out, and there were some good reforms, but there were also some bad reforms. And you saw it applied in the legislature, and we talked about some of those reforms. And then to see how the true effect happened in law enforcement, it was troubling and just very different, very different deputies, obviously younger. A lot of them came on during COVID. And I'm like, oh, where am I at? This is a vastly different department than I remember. So it's been a challenge coming back.
So you were part of the, in my mind, I'm thinking you were part of the legislative process that passed reforms, changes, and then you were on the receiving end. You threw the pass to yourself, if I can borrow from a sports metaphor, and you caught the ball, and it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't have run this route, if you will. Are there things that come to mind that you would say, boy, in hindsight, we should have done this instead of that?
Well, I actually spoke on some of those. And the big thing was human trafficking. I noticed on the governor's desk, I think he signed it already, the human trafficking bill, because human trafficking wasn't a violent crime. In that it's a felony if you human traffic somebody, but it wasn't a violent felony. So the sentence was less. You got to get out early. So if and now that we're going to change that law back, if someone is arrested and sentenced for human trafficking, they're not eligible for early release.
Okay.
So to me, in my mind, and that was simple, if you're human trafficking a young girl, maybe you should spend more time in jail or prison. So you think about what you did, and we need to change that. So when that bill was presented on the floor, I stood up and argued against it, and argued vehemently against it, because it changed that, and it made human trafficking of a child, it's not a crime anymore. So if you're under 18 years of age right now, this is present day law, and you're out being trafficked or you're a prostitute, it's not against the law to be a teenage prostitute. Law enforcement cannot arrest you for that crime. In the past 3 months, over at Florin Road and Stockton Boulevard, we've rescued two 16-year-olds and a 13-year-old.
Oh.
That is not a crime. That is unconscionable. That is not a crime in California. So if I'm a trafficker or a pimp, a lot of them are using young underage girls because it's not a crime. So what's ironic is we can't arrest these girls, but if they're out past 10 p.m., that's curfew violation. I can stop them for curfew violation. Where's the sanity in that?
Correct. And so what's the remedy? What's being done?
The law's got to change. They're victims. That's the issue is they're victims. I agree 100%. And everyone says, yeah, they're victims, so we're not going to contact them or try and arrest them or deal with them. But at the same time, everyone's after the trafficker. That's the golden goose. Mm-hmm. FBI has a trafficker task force. So does Homeland Security, SACPD, everyone's after that trafficker. They're arresting traffickers, but not that often, because the way you get to the traffickers is through the girls. And that's been the big issue with that, because the records are expunged. So you're treating them as victims, which they are. So some folks don't even engage with that. So if you aren't engaged, and you offer them services, you offer them help. And a lot of them refuse help. They don't want help for whatever reasons, because the influence of those traffickers over the girls is very powerful.
Sacramento, I've heard, at least anecdotally, and I think you're bearing it out, that sex trafficking is a huge thing in Sacramento County.
It is a hub. And they also changed the law about loitering for the purposes of prostitution. That's not a crime anymore, or how you dress. So you could go there in areas of Sacramento and see girls right now, not so much as before, but they were in a bra and panties and nothing else, walking out there, a bra and panties, and sometimes less than that. And that's not against the law.
Wow.
So that's the tough part. We're trying to reconcile that, because in the rush to do these laws and decriminalize stuff, it's been a big issue. Look at the retail theft issue right now is really big with smash and grabs.
Correct.
Because when is it okay to go out and shoplift, $950 or less and not be in trouble for it? And the big retailers were complicit in this, and they can afford the cost. They pass it on to the consumers. But the small mom and pop businesses, the grocery stores, little corner stores, they can't absorb those losses. They've been impacted the most.
But not only is it financial, dare I say, it's bigger than even the financial aspect. It is the degradation of community. And we'll get into some word associations down the road, just kind of a heads up. But when you see that, it just detracts from the quality of community. And that's I don't say it's tough to measure, but you know it. It's like, what's going on? We have smash and grabs. We have prostitution that's going on. This is not the community that I desire.
Well, in the rush to do these reforms, like I said, a lot of bad laws were passed, and that's been the big issue in zero accountability. And you look at San Francisco, the mall closing, the stores closing. Correct. They've continued that course.
Correct.
Those state legislators in San Francisco, they're still steering that course. Those local city council members or board of supervisors in San Francisco, they're still doing the same thing. It's status quo. And that's what's troublesome. How can you continue that course that is not sustainable?
Again, I didn't plan on going down this loop. Thank you. So are you in conversation with, you spent quite a few years with the legislature, so you have to have some numbers in your contact list that's just like, hello, sir, ma'am, we need to do ABC.
I tried in the legislature, and just the whole makeup of that legislature right now is very progressive. I'm a Democrat,
correct,
but it's very progressive, and there is zero accountability, and the only way that change comes about is to force change, And that's a big issue. Otherwise, things are not going to change in the legislature. And just a slew of bills this year we had that were bad bills. And at some point, the voters keep putting people in office. When it changes, it'll change because the voters get fed up and get enough. I personally thought there would have been a tipping point already, but there hasn't been.
Well, I've shared with folks that have come into this space, and again, I can't begin to thank you for being forthright and entering into this space, but different council members, just different luminaries, if you will. And I said, what I hear from community, from people, I'm the most progressive liberal person you might ever meet. But now we're at a point, you say a tipping point with homelessness and crime and what have you. I'm done. I'm fed up. Just deal with the situation however you can. I don't care. I'll turn my head. Just fix it. And I think we're at that point. Now, some have pushed back and said, well, if we're at that point, we're in trouble. And others have said, well, I don't think we're at that point. But my feeling and what I am hearing is folks they have reached a level of frustration with real or perceived inaction.
So we're beyond that point. That is a number one issue right now is homelessness in California, in Sacramento, in the nation to an extent, but really in California. People are fed up. They want government to do something about it. We've spent $20 billion as a state, and homelessness has gotten worse. You cannot build your way out of it. Everyone's talking about build. Building doesn't work. That's a part of it. Part of it is if you're mentally ill, you can't make a decision to get help for yourself. If you have a substance abuse issue, it's hard to make a decision for yourself to get fixed. What they don't talk about is the number of people that refuse help. So what do we do if someone's refusing help? And that's really the big issue. Being homeless is not a crime. If you want help, we want to help you. But when people don't want help, you have to have that, that tough love, tough compassion. We don't have that. Someone's having a mental health crisis. There's no place to go. You go to the emergency room and sit in the hall on a gurney, and they discharge you. You got a substance abuse issue and you're homeless, you're pretty much screwed. There's nothing to do for yourself. So we've got to change that narrative in what we do. What no one ever talks about, I've never heard anyone talk about it. We've been working with the homeless since I took over in January. The number of sexual assaults on women are through the roof. Rapes, sexual assaults, domestic violence, it is insane.
And this is in the homeless community.
Right here in Sacramento. When you call 211 or 311 on the homeless thing, the way it does with the county, obviously you want to get placement. It doesn't matter if you're a single male or a mother with 3 children. You're treated the same. I think in everybody's mind, most people, that mother and children should have first priority. They're not given first priority in Sacramento County the way it works in the 311 system, in the city for that matter.
So I've got this authority. I am king of California. I just anointed myself king, and I have made Sheriff Jim Cooper my regent, sub-king for Sacramento County. And I've asked you to deal with homelessness. What are the 1, 2, 3 things you do?
For the most gravely ill, conservatorship. Some folks are walking around, and we've all seen them here in Sacramento, with no clothes on, in and out of traffic, eating out of a garbage can. They cannot make the decision. So when you talk about conservatorship, but some people, when you say conservatorship, lose their mind. No, they have to have their freedom. These people, and I don't know what to call them, but would rather have someone have their freedom walking around in the street with no clothes on, eating out of a trash can than be the adult in the room and put them in a conservatorship. Maybe they got medication, they get well, and they can function normally. Maybe they never do. There has to be a place for them.
Okay, so that's the extreme. That's the number one, conservatorship for those that are incapable of making rational decisions on their own.
Yeah.
What else would you do?
Substance abuse. It is hard to get off drugs. We all know folks that have had kids that had a drug addiction, even alcohol addiction. It is very hard. It might require 2 or 3 times in rehab. You got to have rehab for this. And I'll be honest, our lax drug laws. They changed the drug laws. We've got a major fentanyl problem all over California. We've done nothing to deal with that issue on fentanyl, on the number of deaths on fentanyl. It's important. They don't want to charge these drug dealers to deal with that. So you got to have a rehabilitation system that's for substance abuse that's very robust to deal with these folks and get them help and get them off drugs. You have to do that. And on that, with Prop 47, when they changed the law, before the judge had a power to say, you know what, you got a drug problem, it's not working, I'm going to put you in rehab, I'm going to put you in jail and get you cleaned up. And then once you're cleaned up, I'll go ahead and expunge your record. But no one wants to do that. Sometimes you need the carrot and the stick, and people aren't going to go get help. Even families that have an intervention, they have to force that intervention on someone. There's no one forcing intervention on these people. And that was, drug court was very successful in doing that. You've got to do that. You've got to do that. And then really apply the laws. I mean, because there were homeless camps, a lot of folks wave their hands off. We're not going to deal with that. There are still crimes in homeless camps. There are homeless that prey on others. And like I said, it's not okay. Just because you have a roof on your head, you get protection from law enforcement. Even if you're homeless, you deserve protection. So in the county, we enforce the crime in homeless camps. Other jurisdictions don't. But you have to do that to make sure everyone's safe. It doesn't matter who you are or what your income is. My duty is to protect everyone.
So conservatorship, strong drug intervention program, and homeless camp management. That sounds like a pretty good 3-point plan. I'm not suggesting that, but that doesn't sound bad. Where are you proposing or suggesting that homeless camps be built? If so, where? How?
On the homeless camps, I think obviously you need more housing, but we've been so housing centric. Housing. $20 billion is a lot of money. If you had the money up, I've seen numbers out there, it's a lot of money. And typically there's an article in the paper recently talked about for affordable housing. It's running close to $700,000 per unit. You can buy a house for less than that. It is a lot of people have their hands in the pot, a lot of money going out there, but no one's keeping track of it. What's working and what's not working? I'm all for that. I'm all for that 100%. What are the best practices? Nobody can tell you what the best practices are. We should be doing that because a lot of these organizations, some are good and some aren't that good. And some of it's a money grab.
So how do we wrap our heads and our hands and our minds and how do we proceed forward? How do we, as a community, and you can feel free to define that if you'd like, how do we move forward?
Accountability. You really want accountability and what programs are working. Just like right now with the recidivism rate. Recidivism rate in county jail is high, probably 70%. Your recidivism rate in state prison is probably 70%. So we got all these programs, they aren't working. And no one ever checks to say, hey, what is effective? And just like county jails, most folks go to county jail right now instead of being sentenced to state prison. The prisons were made for rehabilitation. County jails weren't. County jails were made to house somebody for a year or less. Now you have people sentenced to county jail sentences for 8, 10 years. There's no rehabilitation in county jails. We don't have the space. We were never made that way. So there are a lot of issues a lot of inside baseball information that the general public really has no idea about. And how do we change that? Like I said, you see what goes on the news every day. You see the crime, the issues. I think the public's just really numb to it. Until the public's really fed up and wants things to truly change, it's not going to change. And change happens at the ballot box.
And my fear, yeah, maybe that is the right word, but my fear is once we feel that systems haven't responded to the situation in the way we thought they should or they actually should, we have the tendency to overreact. And it's like, you know what? A pox on everyone's house. Let's just go for the jugular, whatever that looks like. How do we keep from potentially eating ourselves?
Oh, and that's what happened with the reforms. The reforms have done that. All the things that are happening right now are attributable to reforms. The drug issue, 100%. Prop 47, the violence, 100%. We got a problem with our gun violence, especially men of color that are dying every day, but yet they want to ban guns from lawful gun owners, but not really address the issues of people that are carrying guns that shouldn't be carrying guns. And a lot of these folks are prohibited from carrying guns, and yet they still carry guns because they don't care. You've seen in the Bay Area pictures of people doing smash and grabs, and they've got armed escorts. These are guys breaking in cars. They've got guys standing there with fully automatic weapons, rifles. Unbelievable. And it's just a lot of the naysayers, the military equipment, it's been really big talking about it here. They don't want the militarization of law enforcement. What's interesting is, so we had a murder, double murder on Howe Avenue last week. Mm-hmm. A young man killed 2 women and then killed himself. And when we first got there, I was there on scene with the SWAT team, and we sent drones in the house. We opened the doors up and sent 2 drones in. And the SWAT team was ready to rush in there if those women were still alive. When the drones went in, the drones found everyone deceased. Mm. Yet drones are considered military equipment. These same drones you can buy on Amazon, you can buy at Walmart, mm-hmm. but it's military equipment, which makes no sense. It saves lives. But we deal with some of the reformists that, we don't want you having that. It's militarized. Okay, we have an armored car, a Bearcat. It's an armored car. It's not an MRAP from Iran. If someone put a landmine on it, it would blow it up. But when we've got to go evacuate someone because someone's barricading their house shooting, we got to pull that armored car up on the front lawn of someone's house and evacuate their elderly grandmother in that armored car. That's considered military equipment.
Does the sheriff's department have a space where community and your chiefs have casual conversations? Just no agenda, but just conversation.
We do a lot of community meetings and events, but a lot of the folks that are involved really are the activists. You see more. And what's interesting, we're a county of 1.7 million people. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a city council meeting or a board of soups meeting, you may get 30 or 40 people out there, activists that are very vocal and talking about what they want and don't want. And they're not really representative of what's going on here in our city and what people want. That's the same thing in the legislature. California is really a middle-of-the-road, moderate state. Correct. But that is not reflected in the legislature and how they vote and the bills they pass.
So I'll push my point again. Not so much, I don't want to say not forums, but something maybe more expanded than what we're having right now. I'm blessed to have Sheriff Jim Cooper in this space. I'm one person, but to have this style of conversation with your chiefs, with folks in positions of authority, with just average people. And, maybe you limit it to 10, 15 people at a time.
So we do have community meetings on a regular basis. I've been to several throughout Sacramento.
Community meetings can be a little unwieldy. I've been to a few, right. And you can get upwards of hundreds right. of people. And it doesn't lend itself to in-depth conversation or to really having that dialogue. And that's even with this space, race, culture, and church. Right. It is intended to have those in-depth conversations to really get to the person and the issue.
Right. I think it depends on where you live. Obviously, you look at some areas of Sacramento and you have some folks that are very active in regarding their concerns. And I would say those folks have a much larger voice than they should.
That's my concern, that it's outsized.
You look at the issues of where it's going on at, you look at the problems, they've got a whole lot of problems because sometimes those voices are loud voices that really aren't representative of what the community wants or needs. And to me, it's a disservice to the taxpayer. And let's be honest, most folks, they're working jobs, they're trying to pay bills and put food on the table, and they got kids or grandkids. They don't have time to go to meetings. The majority of folks, they don't come to city council meetings. They don't go to PTA meetings unless their kids performing. They don't go to the legislature because people are busy and they elect you to go out and do a good job for them.
That is true, but I'll push the point it one more time. Let me go out on a limb. If I picked 100 people and I said, you can have 35 minutes with Sheriff Jim Cooper, do you want to come? Of the 100 people, I'd say 99, if not 100, would say, yes, I would love to come. I think folks weary of, oh, gee, it's another community meeting. There's going to be some screamers. There's going to be, and nothing's going to happen. But if I can have a conversation with you and I get to know you and your heart and the issues so that we can get to a point. Let me just say this, and I have already gotten the high sign twice already. I am a fan of the late Tim Keller. He was a preacher. He was pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian in New York City, in Manhattan. And this is how he defines marriage. He says it's standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at the horizon and saying we can get there together. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he was saying. So if I could borrow that and use that for our community, whatever community, stand shoulder to shoulder, look at the horizon, we can get there together. The problem is we probably have our backs to each other, or we may be eyeball to eyeball with each other, but we're not shoulder to shoulder. And we definitely don't have a shared vision or on the horizon of where we're going. No, we should go left. No, we should go right. No, I think we should go backwards. That's where we're at. But at some point, we have to have that shared vision of this is where we're going. Not one size fits all. I'm not saying Colorado is going to look like California or look like Kentucky or whatever. But in Sacramento County, I'm not sure we have a shared vision of anything.
When you get there, the hard part is a lot of it's inside baseball information. You know, you educate people to try and talk to them, and people just don't know.
Correct. 100%. 100%.
That conversation is important, but it is busy. And like I said, I've got a department of 2,400 people in my department. Sacramento's over 700 square miles, 730 square miles. It is a big county. It is busy. So you try and make time to do these things, but you're managing it, and there's a lot going on, a lot to manage.
The alternative is we'll spend another $20 billion and we won't go anywhere. And we'll continue to have these same conversations because, like, to your point, we're busy. We don't have resources. We don't have time to think. But unless and until we take time, make time, set aside, as they say, start slow to go fast. Measure twice, cut once, whatever analogy you want to use. That's the challenge.
But we're robust. I mean, I'm not willing to meet with anybody, number one. I meet with a lot of people and have. And we put that out. We do a lot of things in the community where a sheriff's available, come speak to them, ask questions, whether it's coffee with a cop, community forums. We do a lot to put it out there. So, I'm supportive of that. There's a lot going on, and it's tough. I think a lot of people just don't have an idea. A lot of it's inside baseball information.
I would agree.
And the part of the problem is Prop 47, the voters voted for that. The voters voted for Prop 57. So the voters have been complicit in this also. They voted for these things that were horrible.
So now we have to, from your perspective, we have to unring that bell, if you will, in order, again, we won't get there and have that shared vision of where we need to be unless we're entering into this conversation, not just watching commercials.
But it's in the legislature, though. The legislature does that. Those are the laws that do it. It happened in the legislature. That's a whole different. My thing is being sheriff. Yeah, I was one of 120. Now I'm one of one in Sacramento County, the chief law enforcement officer. So I know what it takes to resolve a lot of these issues. I am doing that as a party of one, a caucus of one, in that autonomy. I can move things and do that. We're addressing the homeless issues and dealing with that very differently and very effectively than other jurisdictions are in Sacramento with that. So there's a lot of things that we're coming to really address on those issues that are much different and so far have been very effective. So I have that small span of control that we're doing the right thing and advancing what needs to be done. And that's, like I said, it's very different in the county how we go about with that, whether it's homeless, whether it's human trafficking, those hot topic issues, or violent crime. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with it, and no one ties our hands. There's not a city council that ties our hands, that holds us back from doing our job. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, because politics has a place, but politics shouldn't override everything in dealing with some of these issues. And it is a public health crisis.
100%. 100%. Sheriff, again, I got another page of stuff I'd like to talk to you about. We're not going to get to it. I so sincerely thank you for, one, being in the space, two, being Sheriff of Sacramento County. And if there's anything that we can do to advance community, you let us know. We're happy to do that. And I am hoping, I know everybody wants the opportunity to speak with Sheriff Jim Cooper, but I am hoping that in the not too distant future that you will be able to enter into this space again, and we can finish up these questions and maybe add a few more.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I just want to encourage voters to be engaged and to be involved and really know what you're voting for.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.